Hello and thank you for joining us. As you know from the earlier webinar, assuming you saw that one, this one is completely and focused entirely for the nominated officer senior managers. And of course the nominated officer has been selected from the senior management ranks. A little later on we'll be going through a list of the definitions of a senior manager, where they come from. That's all included in the pack. And we're then going to move on in this webinar to what is a practical guide for senior managers. Most of you have probably read legislation or bits from it, heard something from it, and very many people are telling you that which needs to be achieved. As Lars was saying a little earlier on, they read that bit, but it's good to team up with someone that can help you with delivering the tools you need to use and explain to you how you need to use these tools and the various options. So we like to think that as a consultancy, we've done all the heavy lifting. We've researched all the various acts and documents that one needs to research, and they're referred to in your first manual. So you indeed can refer to them if you wish and check on what we are saying. Within the manual, you'll read one section which is critically important. This is not an option, it's a legislation, and that bit reads very much that your firm is committed to fulfil all regulatory obligations in respect of anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing. That's the phrase that runs through most of the legislation. In practice, you'll find that the counter-terrorist bit is probably very, very small money, not a lot going on. But the anti-money laundering, fraud, corruption, bribery, drug money, then that is a much bigger number, and we'll be looking at that differently. And we'll be giving you a full breakdown. One thing you're required to do initially is to undertake a risk assessment upon your own firm. Now, we've got two firms working with us and indeed giving us guidance. We do something with regulation, hopefully we're very familiar with it. We're not estate agents, so we are taking questions from estate agents to help and guide us. So the risk profile of Katie's small firm on the Isle of Wight compared to Lars in the City and West End of London, totally different. So you will assess the risks according to your own firm. And you can take a risk-based approach to each of your individual firms. It's a focus specifically for yourself. We hope, and we've tried very, very hard to design the hard copy manuals to give you a generic spread for big firms, medium firms, small firms, and you can select the elements that work for you. You get a soft copy so you can delete as required. All firms are required to appoint a nominated officer to report suspicious activities to the National Crime Agency, NCA. Unfortunately, the regulators, and I'm afraid we are also guilty, we tend to dive into mnemonics and use them. So there's also a guide to mnemonics in the manual. Apart from nominating the nominated officer, and this person is key, they need to be senior, they need to have sufficient seniority. So if they do come across, or when they come across, a suspicious activity, they can say, stop, walk away. This one is not for us, it is outside our risk profile. So it is a very decisive job, and the person needs to have the ability to take decisions and stick with them. So they do need managerial authority. They have to have enough authority to deal with that, and they have to have a clean record of their own. So the legislation says the MLRO and their deputy have to be screened by the firm. Doesn't quite describe how you screen, so we do put in suggestions in our manual, and they're based largely on what one does in other sectors. So we expect the nominated officer, the MLRO, at least to have a clean track record, obviously no criminal record, a very clean credit record, a clean management record, and a progressive career. Any more elements that you wish to add for your own firm, that's your decision, but that's pretty well the minimum. You can expect the authorities to check the MLRO because they have to be registered with HMRC. So HMRC, they've got an enormous database, as you would expect, and they will check that the individuals have not got a criminal record. Motoring offences don't count, but the criminal record is very, very much there. Having appointed a nominated officer, you also need a deputy for that nominated officer, and the screening requirements for them are indeed very, very similar. So both the nominated officer and deputy, or indeed deputies, if you have branches spread across the county or indeed the country, then it may suit your business profile to have a suitable person, a nominated officer, deputy in each of the branches. So your choice, it's all risk-based. But the appointment of the nominated officer, you've already done. And the last point here is you need to devote enough resources to deal with money laundering and terrorist financing. Resources really has three definitions, I'd guess. One is the people of quality and standard, allow them the time to fulfill their duties, and money should not be a consideration. Now, complying with all the AML rules and regulations and procedures is not expensive. You don't need new IT systems or processes, but it does require some training time because all of the senior managers are jointly responsible and committed. So although the MLRO will do most of the work, the entire management board and senior managers have individual responsibility for AML and counter-terrorist financing. I say it often enough, but from time to time I can get my tongue in a reef knot. All the senior managers need to be familiar with the firm's policy and procedures. Now, down the line a little bit, we'll be sending you a manual which explains all of your policy and procedures. Excuse me. It's not something that you want to memorise. There's no need to. If you can refer to it, then we're going to deliver that for you and it'll be there as and when you need it. The nominated officer and deputies really have most of the responsibility. They've got quite a bit to do. And one of those responsibilities is to make sure that everyone has an anti-money laundering and CTF awareness. Only an awareness, but the more senior people, the senior managers, and of course all the directors, do need to evidence that they have got policy and procedures and they've read it. So we can send you all the documentation, but also send you a checklist that you can get all of your employees to sign the documents they've read, just to acknowledge that the MLRO has discharged their duty and everyone has got that pretty well organised. The MLRO and his deputy, their main function is to make sure that everybody is aware of anti-money laundering. I have mentioned earlier that in the legislation, it is terribly true, that a part of the reasoning is that it is there to protect your firm. You do not want to get involved with the crooks. They will select firms that are soft on anti-money laundering, not aware, ignoring it, or taking on bad business in any event. They need the cash flow. Good firms can afford to be anti-money laundering aware, and everyone is trained and aware of what could be a suspicious activity. So all of your staff that interface with clients, both buyers and vendors, need to be aware of the rules. If something is suspicious, then they must talk only to the MLRO or his or her deputy. They can discuss. It may be absolutely clean, it's just a lack of understanding, or you may need some clarity or ask for some more information. And then the transaction can continue. And of course, we're all commercial businesses. If we can continue with a transaction, that's exactly what we need to do, more the merrier. But it must be good business. So check it through and check with the MLRO. If it is suspicious, then the money laundering officer will take the decision that this needs reporting, and he will report it to the NCA as a suspicious activity report, known to its friends as SAR. And later in the sequence, where you'll be explaining SARs, you can go on an HMRC website and they explain SARs for you. And indeed, there's a full explanation in a later hard copy module. So senior managers of estate agents have a personal responsibility. I'll just refer to the visual, that senior managers of estate agents are personally liable if they do not take the necessary steps to protect, that word again, to protect the business from money laundering and terrorist financing. It is not something you can duck. Sorry guys, it's there. Now the list of senior managers are now up on the screen. They're directors, company secretaries, executives, members of the board or members of the management body, whichever that may be, partners and a sole trader. If you're a limited partnership, obviously all partners. Any other senior manager. Definition of senior manager: someone that can take a decision to go for that piece of business or stop it. So that's largely that definition. Risk-based approach, HMRC and FCA allow you to take your own decisions, so I'll leave it with you. The role of MLRO does sound slightly daunting. It is initially. I'm an MLRO for 2 firms, and I can tell you it's very, very interesting. A lot of your firm, your team turn to you. It is team building. It can be challenging, but when you do get involved with it, it is very, very interesting, and it's a key role for your firm. So don't duck the issue. If it's a job you can undertake very well, then please take on that role. The nominated officer has got to be a fit and proper person with all the various checks. HMRC will check that person to make sure that they are fit and proper. Full details of what you do, how you do it, and how you register with HMRC are in the manual that will be delivered to you following this webinar. So you've heard the verbal. Most of you will forget it within 10 minutes of the end of the webinar. So the hard copy will give you the details that you can look at to follow on through. We've been talking a lot about the MLRO and their deputy. The first task, once they've been nominated and you sorted them out in your own mind, you must, not an option, big word, must do it. Action point, please, to list, and that is register this individual with HMRC. HMRC keep a register of all of the MLROs and their deputies, and anytime you change role or someone changes that role, then you must inform HMRC, and you can do it within 14 days. People very often have a bit of a sort of a standoff relationship with HMRC, and I can understand that. But in this scenario, they deem you to be a part of the team catching the crooks. There's a help desk that they have as well as ourselves. They've got an HMRC help desk. They answer the phone, and their online inquiries, their fact sheets and online inquiries are extremely helpful as to how you register. They're obviously going to be overwhelmed with registrations coming up to the end of the year, but it's something that you really have to do. So the next discussion point we're going to move on to, of course, is going to be HMRC registration. HMRC registration is for all estate agents or associated businesses. I'm just going to go through the slide and list what they're going through. So the agencies captured are very much the residential and commercial estate agent services, the ones that most firms will be sort of delivering. Property and land auction engineering services, auctioneering services to be more correct. Relocation agency or any proper finding services, and UK estate agents across the UK generally. Also captured within the scope of regulation is any firm sending out details or property details and arranging viewings, offering a personal advice service to potential sellers or buyers, answering questions from potential sellers or buyers and passing on details to customers. It's a long list. It's in the guide, you can check it. I'll keep going. If you are providing or arranging energy performance certificate, providing a property evaluation, providing a plan or property or taking photographs, providing customers with for sale board that includes the estate agency name. They have to be registered. So that's the list of firms. You'll have to register the names of the nominated officers and deputies. Officers themselves, however many you have, each office has to be registered because you're responsible for it. Shops, auction houses, call centres, home address of most of your businesses. A virtual office, agents and franchises you control. You don't have to register the non-active sites such as storing business cards or people involved only in training or general management employees, but you do have to do the rest. Talking to a number of firms, it often comes up, people say, oh well, we almost do that but, and they try and jiggle the words around so they can come out from scope. Don't. The regulator, HMRC, FCA, PRA, in the UK we have principle-based regulation supported by law. So there is no point in trying to jiggle around or use weaselly words to get around legislation. It doesn't work. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So it's not worth going round it. If you're within scope, then face up, get it right, and join all of the good firms. Once you've nominated the officers, HMRC registered, then your first on-site task is your own risk assessment. You know your firm, you obviously want to protect it, so all you do now is identify the risks. So it applies to all UK firms, and to get this risk assessment list, it's not our guess list, then we refer to the major agencies that are going to help us. The UK's National Risk Assessment. Our guide has been embedded in what we're writing to you. HMRC have issued a risk assessment, then we've taken note of what they're offering. It includes the size and nature of your business, two extremes really, Katie's small firm on the Isle of Wight, family run, and Lars, a very large commercial firm in the City of London, doing businesses and very, very large properties, 16 offices. And the customer base, and also your underlying beneficial owners. The beneficial owners are identified in your risk assessment and the whole of the business plan. And also action for you, the type of services that you can offer your clients can be very much a risk in the way in which you do it. An example could be a property finding service or a sales agency service. Auction houses, they almost have no time or ability to check their client's identity. So for them, it's more challenging. The financing methods that your clients could be using to buy a property. A standard arrangement would be obviously a UK resident employee getting a mortgage or paying the deposit from a normal bank, a UK deposit institution, a clearing bank, and getting a mortgage from a well-known lending or mortgage provider. Any other financing business that your clients may go through, then this could be risky. Money from hedge funds, money coming in from overseas, money coming in from a tax haven, money coming in from a business you can't identify. These are all risks. It's up to you to identify it. And again, I hate to mention it, but it also applies to the general geographical area. Usually the popular concept is that the major conurbations, London, Birmingham, Manchester, Glasgow, Edinburgh, etc., then it's the bigger conurbations, bigger population, bigger spread of types of individuals, which could include some criminal activity or criminal money. One would always think that the small firm on the Isle of Wight is hidden away nicely. It is. And that could make it very attractive to someone that wants to hide from the authorities. I do happen to know one property on the Isle of Wight that is a hideaway for a Russian oligarch. It's all above board, but it is a hideaway. So every firm needs to assess its own risk in some detail. To help you do that, we do provide you with the tools or risk assessment tools. So let's just look at one of those risk assessment documents that we have for you. Now, this is just one page that comes out from the manual, and we use a very simple, straightforward system. Red, dangerous; amber, one needs care; green, good to go. So you can see here, only an example. You have these tools, and all we've done is just put a colour alongside it so you can see the way in which we would risk rate it as a general activity. So if you go through the manual, read it, look at the examples completed of risk rating, and then you have a blank template for you to do your own. Talking to MLROs, I do understand that one branch may have different risks from another. Fine. You do buy the manuals with copyright, so you can photocopy all the templates in the back, send them to different branches and use them differently. If you have questions coming up, and you will, then use our help desk, telephone help desk. We will respond to your questions and give you as much help as possible. The next webinar, we'll write you the date, will be coming up in 2 weeks' time, and that'll be covering the essential subject of staff training. This module, this webinar comes in 2 modules, a 40-minute module and a 30, and it is for all staff. So I strongly recommend that all staff see the webinar. If it doesn't suit you, it's inconvenient, then that's fine. We can send you the slides, you can run them yourself. One point there, at this stage in the production of the webinars, we are investigating the possibility of these being evergreen webinars, which we're certain we can do, but they should be available every 2 hours online. So if one particular time slot doesn't suit one bunch of employees, that's fine. You can log in to repeat 2 hours later, but we'll write to you and clarify that. So the next one is really the AML guide. The slides will be available. At the end of the webinar, there will be some test papers, but they'll be delivered to your premises so you can run tests in your own time with your own people. Please remember, everyone has to have evidence. Wish you well. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Have a good one.